Welcome to the Standing Stone Podcast. This episode is part 3 of 4 from the Pacific Northwest Tour. Charles, our host, and Fred Rice had the opportunity to go to the Pacific Northwest on a history tour of bird dogs. This episode is Bob and Karen Kline and some of the dogs from the 50s and 60s. They talk about line breeding and Radbach Kennels. I want to say thanks to our patrons, the largest supporter of everything Standing Stone. And if you yourself would like to support this podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/standingstonekennels. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and don't forget to give the podcast a rating. It really helps us to continue to grow.
Well, let's start off by we're going to cover a lot of ground. But, you know, the beauty of it is I can't remember everything anyway. So you're not going to be.
I can't either.
So, like, you know, let's start like the very first time you and I ever talked. And like,
I don't remember that.
Well, you know, it was, you called me that day. I was at church and I saw this phone call coming in from somebody in Washington.
Uh-oh.
And I didn't take it in church. I waited till I got out. And then I'm driving down the highway, actually going down to Columbia to visit my mom. And, you know, I thought, well, listen to the message. It was you. And you're like, hey, you introduced yourself to me in voice message, and you said, you know, you'd seen Marty's dog and
nice dog,
the pedigree, and then I called you.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, this she's so awesome. She, you know, she just got all this information. So let's talk about that. I mean, you know, you shared how you were in California, right?
I'm Southern California, raised there. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was raised. And, Bob was a naval officer stationed there, Vietnam days, and we met. And then once we got married, we moved to the Northwest.
Gotcha.
First it was Idaho, then Washington.
Right.
And you didn't have German Shorthaired Pointers then?
I had a golden retriever.
We had surfboards. I didn't even know what any of this was. My family thought they still think we're nuts. Yeah. You know, they're California surfers and beach people, flatlanders we call. So no, and Bob's the one that introduced me to the outdoor. I was a fashion buyer in California, and when I came up here is when I got the job with Eddie Bauer, and I got hooked on the outdoor sports and the company and the whole thing. And then we were at a cocktail party for Eddie Bauer, and this beautiful salt liver male short hair walks into the party, and we fell in love with this dog. He was a phenomenal dog, and he was a grandson of Lutz.
Wasn't he Krautina's litter mate?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So his sister was going to be bred,
right.
And I said, can I get on the wait list? And they said, yes, you can. I said, but I only want a liver male because I saw this dog. And there was only one born, so that's how we picked him. And it drove people crazy because he was winning later, and they go, how'd you pick this dog? I said, we wanted a liver male. They go, you picked him because of color?
Uh-huh.
I mean, they didn't like it.
Yeah.
They were upset about hearing that. But we didn't know.
What was his name?
Grit.
I was Grit. That was your first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Started off with a bang.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know. That was our baby. We didn't have children.
So Timberlane's Grit.
Timberlane's Grit. And the Timberlanes came from Peggy Davis, Winifred Davis, and she was a major financial backer of Bob Hulcomb's. Her and Ralph Parks and all them were backers for Bob when he got out of the military to get him started as a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And she had the kennel named Timberlane, so we stuck with it. Everybody goes, where'd that come from? Why did you use it in the beginning? It was because of her. Yeah. And then later when Bob gave us permission to use Rodbach, we did. But we went out hunting with this dog, and we were just having a good time, but we were frustrated because he was pointing at Tweety birds, right? And so I talked to some of the guys at Bauer, and I said, well, do you know a trainer or anybody can help us? And they go, yeah, call this guy. And it was Bob Holcomb. So I called him and told him what was going on, and he says, come on down this weekend, let's talk, and kind of went from there.
Yeah. I had gone through the gun dog book by Walters. Mm-hmm. Just do it by this week and that. And
right. I did the same thing.
I did that with the fishing pole with the wing and the pheasant wing and all the pheasant scent on it. Did everything. So gap gun, boom, got the dog to point the feather, throw it in the air, fire the blank, and the dog looked at me, says, okay, now what's next? I stood this and I'm only 12 weeks old.
Right. Yeah.
And so anyway, he progressed the next 4 weeks into quite a escape artist, so to speak, from the training routine, and became more that I could actually understand how to handle him or let him become what he really wanted to.
He was your first short hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
First hunting dog.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we had a golden retriever that wouldn't
hunting.
do anything.
Still good. So your first hunting dog.
She'd spit out a bird and say, brush my teeth.
And I told her, I told Karen, I said, I think we need to get a real bird dog. And I was thinking of Brittany.
Wow.
But I'm glad we saw
you kind of jumped right into the sort of the right stuff.
Yeah.
We did. We were just naive.
Well,
though.
it was her position at the time with Eddie Bauer at the time and the people that worked there and what they did. It was quite a develop outdoor activities with their customers.
Yeah.
Across the board. They had fly fishing and shotgun shooting,
game,
skeet
everything.
and trap,
Big game.
duck hunting, big game. They had all the outdoor clothes. Karen came in, was hired to basically develop a woman's wear line there. They were just selling men's smalls and had nothing that would appeal to a woman. So that got her started, and she did so well, I'm guessing, that they hired into management and product development and all that. And so
it was fun.
Yeah.
Best 7 years. It was when it was real Eddie Bauer.
Yeah.
Before it got sold.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
So you connected with Bob Holcomb.
Yes.
And let's talk about that, like, how that unfolded.
Well, finally, we were going on Christmas holiday, and he said, leave the dog here. So he's going to review and get back to us. So we get back from our trip, and Bob called him, and Holcomb offered us, this is 76, 75.
75.
He offered us $2,500 for the dog, and we kind of went, whoa, this is our baby.
Yeah. Was
And-
just a year old.
Yeah. And we kind of went, we were in shock. We didn't know what to think. So we called Peggy Davis, Winifred Davis.
And we didn't even know her at the time.
We didn't.
Mhm.
And she said, oh, he's not going to keep that dog, He's going to sell it to one of his wealthy clients and campaign him. And she says, he's got to be really good. And Holcomb knows it. So she says, would you consider doing it? And I go, we don't even know what we're talking. So we sat and talked to Bob Holcomb, and he told us, let's do it step by step. And
His
work
training routine was, he had like 2 classes a year, sort of like the pros do now. And January 1 started, and by March, he was entered in field trials.
Yeah.
Before 2.
Yeah. And he did not run him in puppy derby.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in it. He felt it
Didn't
gave
want
the dogs bad
habits.
habits.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to hunt this dog and let it chase every bird. It'll break him. He'll stop chasing them.
Break himself.
He'll break himself. And it was the hardest thing we did that day. I think it was 19 birds. And he finally, after bird 19, stopped chasing them.
That was 19 hen pheasants.
I was going to say, what kind of birds?
Yeah.
Hen pheasants. He had to fly,
That was hard
let him
to
fly
do.
away.
But you want to make sure he doesn't catch them.
Yeah.
Yes.
He never did.
He didn't.
No.
Yeah.
But there's a highway out there with big potato trucks, beet trucks going, and you're going, oh, God, he's going to die. He's going to run right into those trucks. It was hard to do, but we did exactly what he told us to do, and it worked.
Yeah, and today's, watching 19 pheasants fly off is a pretty good chunk of money to let fly away. So
Yeah.
Those
These
were
were
wild,
wild.
birds.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Back then, it was,
That's an important piece
that
of
was
info.
when
Yeah.
the Royal City area.
They're
was
not,
just
not
being
catching them,
developed.
probably.
No, these were wild birds. And the worst thing is when they got
You're
our
training on wild pheasants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, yes.
Originally.
We transitioned through the change when the
Gotcha.
farms or the land got cleaned up.
Yeah.
and
So
all
that story keeps coming up, that how, back in those days, the pheasant numbers out here were
outrageous.
phenomenal.
Well, they had, they were, the irrigation came in and they were putting in circles. Well, circle only goes around in a circle, and every corner of a section was brush or sagebrush or cattails or weeds or whatever. That's where the pheasants hung out. And then they did go into different crops. We hunted a lot of sugar beets, which was really good because the pheasants could burrow under and they would hide from predators, hawks and stuff. And the dogs would work them really well. That was the most productive. And then alfalfa, if the alfalfa was high enough that pheasants could scurry around and run off, and then cut corn stubble. That was all there. So there was a year-round feed for the pheasants, and until all the corners got cleaned out and the extension squirters or whatever on the circles extended the acreage of farmable land, the pheasants then just got thinned down.
Yeah. So Holcomb was a pro trainer by that point in time, right?
Yes.
That was his. That was his job.
Yes.
Right. And he had like a program established.
Yes.
That, and you're saying he had you come out, right? You're working your own dog.
No, he worked the dogs. It was like,
but he wanted you participating.
Yes.
The owners, right?
Yes. And he'd say to Bob, we'd go out on training days, and he'd say, Bob, go stand by that dog. It wasn't our dog. It was just someone's dog.
Was on an honor. He would run, like a brace or
teaching you how to read the dog. That's what he was doing. But he didn't tell you what he was doing. He just made you go do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
He'd show you.
So would there be a group of people?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We'd
on
go
a
out,
weekend, it was
a crowd.
A crowd, and the wives came out and brought the goodies to eat.
Lots of food.
So it was more social Saturdays. Sort of like going to a mini field trial, and it was just Bob's dogs. But I had the opportunity to go out different times during the week, and depending on, we lived in Seattle and then Lacey, which was close to Fort Lewis, where he trained. And so between jobs or had certain jobs that I had freedom to travel, I would go and spend a odd day with him training, watching him. So I didn't do the gunning or anything because I just couldn't do it for,
you didn't want to mess with Holcomb.
Yeah. If he needed a bird killed, he wasn't going to hand me a gun.
He did live in Germany. He sort of ran it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You followed his rules.
Gotcha.
But there was a reason for it. There was results driven rules.
Yeah. I guess the main thing that I got from him was, and Karen said it to lots of people, just trust your dog. And he said, and he knew these were his dogs in a sense, so that he in a sense developed through what he learned in Germany and saw the breeding there, and then through his training program, he was basically just polishing natural instincts.
Yep. He was bringing out the best of the dogs.
So let's talk a little bit about, Bob, and not a little bit, but a lot about, how, where he came from and how he ended up in Washington. And
his father worked at the Bremerton shipyard in Washington, and the family was established in Paulsville, and he used to fish, but he was really into horses, and he ended up being a jockey that went to Cuba to run in the, some famous horse race. And then his size prevented him from staying a jockey.
He wasn't a small man, was he?
No. And everybody goes, when they hear that he was a jockey around here, they go, no way. But his love of horse and he was going to be a veterinarian, and he went to Washington State, and he was going to, they have a great vet school. And then he upped in the military, and his first tour, I'll let you take it, Bob, from there.
He was, I believe, drafted Second World War.
Okay.
and went to Germany and was wounded fairly early in fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Got a Purple Heart.
he got, and he was, after he got repaired so he could actually do something.
So was he a veterinarian yet?
No.
Had he even started?
No.
He was going to be.
He never did get to Wazoo. He went and they drafted him.
Gotcha. So that was his goal was that
to be a vet.
But then it got derailed to go.
And so then and I don't know how much power but I'm assuming he stayed in because he was wounded. They needed, and this is before the war ended.
Mm-hmm.
And he got into the veterinary, Army
Corps.
Veterinary Service, which was taking care of the horses and dogs of the military and, wherever their bases were.
Mm-hmm.
So he went up in rank because he was just the kind of guy that would get promoted and got the job done. And so he ended up in Germany, seeing the dogs and horses and all that. And when he ended that tour is when he escorted Lipizzan stallions. His role, he didn't do in the Operation Cowboy that rounded them up, but he took the horses that were rounded up and went on a ship and they sailed and delivered it to Fort Ord.
Mm-hmm.
He saved the breed.
And, right. So let's talk about why they were doing that. So the war was ending, the Germans were losing.
They started to kill them off.
They were starting to. So the Nazis were trying to destroy things.
Yep.
They didn't want anybody to have anything that was German.
Blows my mind that they were doing that to their own culture.
Everything. Anything that they felt was German.
I know.
That they had a value system different than us.
So they're destroying things
dogs,
like
horses,
the German Shorthair
sheep.
It wasn't just German Shorthairs, but
horses. Anything that they felt was German created, German bred. They were going to make sure that nobody got.
So Holcomb and others, he's an example, but there were other people involved in helping the German people save as much as they could.
Yeah.
Their heritage.
And so he ended up at Fort Ord and then got out I believe he was out of the service then and tried to go to Wazoo to vet school.
He did go to vet school. Got accepted.
And he said, I think there were two things he missed. One was the military atmosphere. He fit in with that, personality to be a master sergeant in the Army. And I think it was also his future wife because he had met her before and she was involved.
Hunter jumper.
Hunter jumper. And this was probably in the occupation time.
Right.
And met her and the family. And then.
What do you mean by hunter jumper?
She was a horse rider.
Horse rider.
Competition.
That's what you see in the Olympics, jumping.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, didn't she? He also met the Radbach Kennel owner during that.
On the second tour.
Okay, so I'm getting ahead of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe he had helped import some dogs from Germany before the Radbachs.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And he had one personal one he kept.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how they saved, just real quick, we'll touch on how the horses, the dogs were saved was mostly by distribution. So they would spread them out. So if there was a breeder, they would just take their animals and just give them to people. And then that way, when the SS came to look for the stuff, because they know,
weren't there.
Especially if we got to remember that the pedigrees for all these dogs are the government. It's a government document that's created. They know where the dogs are. They actually, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but about the white dogs, but that was a government order. That wasn't the breeders deciding they didn't want to have dogs with white on them. That was the Nazis said no. And so it's awesome. The horse story is awesome. And I know that I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individual little stories of dogs and how they were saved and that we'll probably never be able to hear, but it's a fascinating part. So I just want to make sure that
But I think the main thing was in the veterinary core of the army. He wasn't fighting. He was helping the locals
German
with
people.
and he traveled all over Germany. I guess trying to
Humpty Dumpty back together.
Veterinary care is
Yeah.
what they were doing.
Yeah, they were.
And
helping him.
so he ended up seeing, and because of who he was accepted by the German
locals.
normal people. And he, so then when he went back, and I believe it might have been partially through his new wife, Audie, they had married before he went back to his second tour in country.
She came over here and met his family. They got married, and then they went back.
Gotcha. And you said in one conversation I had with you that she was a product of the sort of that German experiment to create the superior race.
Yeah.
Right?
And with her, they did.
Yeah, she was gorgeous.
She's a phenomenal lady.
Very lot of class.
Very intelligent.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone also just blows my mind that they actually had a breeding program for humans.
Humans.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah,
And
the fair-haired, blue-eyed,
and
Aryan, whatever.
She's a really classy lady.
Yeah.
Just a great lady.
So he goes back over for second.
And he was there quite a few years because
Yes.
weren't the boys,
sons.
some of them
Two of the
born
three
there?
sons were born there, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Germany. And so I know it. He said that he lived at
Radbach Kennels.
Radbach Kennel, which would be the estate of
Ernest
Ernst Bleckmann, who did
Mr.
sort of
Cement.
like Mr. Cement of Germany.
Gotcha. And he was called Mr. Cement because
That's what
He- I
so we
suspect he
named-
was one of the key players in the
bunkers and whatever.
all that.
Yeah,
gotcha.
he was a big player.
Very wealthy man. But we're not supposed to call it back. It's supposed to be Bach. Radbach.
Okay, I was
Kennels.
right. So I've always been saying it correctly.
You said it
Rodbach.
correct.
Rodbach.
All right.
Yeah.
See, once again, it's going to come out on the top
Yes, you do.
Hey, a blind squirrel every once in a while.
But the boys were raised there. Grant, I tried to get him here. He just can't. But he has stories from that time, as a young boy,
there.
and he remembers. But that's when he started arranging to ship certain dogs into the States to these key clients on the West Coast. Don Miner, Ralph Parks. He didn't import to Winifred, but she coordinated with him on a breeding to some of these dogs. And I feel like because of the relationship with Leroy Merrill, he was importing to him too. So
Johnny Merrill.
I mean, John Merrill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of his son Leroy.
Okay.
But so he was instrumental in shipping some really nice dogs.
So he had already established these connections with the German Shorthaired people in
Germany.
the northwest part of
Oh, yes.
of the United States,
Yes.
even though he wasn't yet a trainer or breeder.
No.
He's working on it.
But he's sort of, that was a goal.
Yeah, you could tell just the way he talked about it. And, like the day he met Greif and all that. And then he started promoting people to breed to Greif because of the get they got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a strong interest in breeding, and he was very into breeding the horses. So he already had that passion about it, I would say. It isn't something that they trained him to do. He had it to begin with.
So let's go back to, was it Bleckmann?
Bleckmann, yeah.
So was Bleckmann, even though Bleckmann was first of all, apparently a wealthy businessman,
Right,
probably before World War II started,
right.
he had a business that was in the cement business. So he was of value to the Germans.
Absolutely.
He may not have been supportive but he had probably no choice
Right.
to participate. But then it's over. Was he also did he have to try to save his animals and do you know anything?
I never heard, but I suspect they all did.
But that's where, so Holcomb made a connection with him, right?
Yeah.
They became good friends.
And he lived there,
He stayed there, right?
his family.
And
then-
some of the ancestors were Radbach were KS, meaning the best dog in Germany for
Right.
that year, and Zott and Fida or something like that in the pedigree were KS
Yeah.
in
And
Germany.
was Axel alive yet, or was it?
Well,
After-
I think he was alive
Yeah.
because this is just right after the war.
Gotcha.
So, and that was the dog they were all pushing to breed to.
So the Germans were trying to rebuild their
stock,
the stock, and Axel became like a go-to dog.
foundation
Yeah.
dog.
But he was bred to a Radbach bitch
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
was shipped to Holcomb
Right.
or to Don Miner or somebody in the States with
A pregnant, a bred female.
Yes,
was
was
bred.
bred to
They shipped several pregnant females.
Axel
Gotcha.
von Wasserschling. Yeah.
And that's probably where Bimbo came from.
Bimbo
Yes.
came over in his mother's womb.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did Holcomb ever see Axel? Lay hands
Oh,
on him?
I'm
or-
sure he did.
Yeah. That would
Knowing
have been amazing.
Holcomb, he would have checked that out.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, he probably.
I'm
he wouldn't,
sure,
that
yeah.
wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right. What a piece of information there. That
Yeah.
would have been so cool to.
Well, just to hear him talk about some of these dogs, and he's so casual about it, and we're all sitting there going, "What?
You actually saw that dog?
Yeah,
Really?
But if you think about how important it was that his eye was there on the ground to say, yes, this isn't just some dog the Germans say we need to bring over. I'm seeing it,
Well,
and I'm seeing what it's producing.
Well,
and
that's a great
When he
point,
lived
man.
there, he went out with their game stewards and all that, and learned how to train short hairs, or how they did back.
Mhm.
What limited they did, and then he was actually
a judge."
judged field trials in Germany during the occupation times after the war was ended. He also, I'm trying to think of the other things there. He was a Club Kurtzar, which was a group of German people that were proponents of the short hair breed, kind of like the royalty of the normal people. And he was asked to join that club, and because of that, he was able to judge field trials over there.
and then see more and more.
Yeah,
All
of
get to
them.
see more dogs because
yes.
then people are bringing dogs to you instead of you having to go find somebody.
So and then he just was one of those guys that he knew how to read dogs and knew what they were thinking, I guess, and he just was automatic of fitting into becoming a trainer. And his dogs, he learned how to break dogs. He was the best one breaking dogs back then. So,
And they kept their style.
yeah.
They didn't lose style. And it was real common when you were breaking a dog then.
Yeah.
They'd lose the style because of the pressure. These dogs never lost their style.
Yeah.
They were happy dogs, just intense. High head, high tail.
Yeah.
But
Fun to
Charles,
watch.
I think that's a great point, or to me, that's a nugget of gold right there about that point that here's a guy, Holcomb, Bob Holcomb, the right person in the right place
Yes.
to make such a huge impact.
I can't even imagine how different the breed could be as a whole. Like right now, the effect, what it could be if he wasn't there to pick dogs, and how many. Do you know how many he's?
Oh, no.
There's probably no way to know how many, because he sent them to other people, and
Right.
And
And he arranged them.
pregnant females, and so who knows how many dogs.
And he was very
were brought
casual
over.
about that kind of stuff. He didn't like to brag. He didn't want to talk about his Purple Heart and nothing. But you could see him limping. You knew he got shot in the leg. But he didn't talk about that. He's not bragging numbers, and it's important to see the dog succeed and develop. But he wasn't into I did this.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
You talk a lot about his character, and you had a lot of respect for him.
I did. I've heard, when he's with the guys, he was one way, but being a client of his and a woman, he was very respectful, had a lot of class to us, and very forthright. I found him a very honorable man. He never let us down. He was always honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You never felt like you were getting worked. He may have been, but I sure didn't feel it. And he just was first class with us. And I felt like took us under his wing because we showed interest.
Yeah.
You know, we were
He
like,
recognized you guys. You were going to have a passion for it.
yeah, we didn't know it, but he developed our passion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The dogs tend to help with that too.
Yeah.
When you have when he gets a really good dog and he's pointing out why that dog is better than that dog, and you can instantly see it, or you've seen it, but you didn't think about
understand.
it that way.
Yeah. He made you understand the visual you were watching.
Yeah.
So there was a point where he made an agreement with Bleckman to bring the Radbach kennel name over here. How did that happen?
I don't know.
I think he just started doing it. And there was the strong, you got to remember, this man opened his whole compound to Bob Holcomb to live there with his family. So they obviously had a good rapport, right? A total trust. And then Bob just started shipping the dogs in to these key players. And that's how it evolved, really.
Gotcha. And the Bleckman kennel still remains. So is it even still active today?
No,
but it did carry on then. There was a Radbach version in Germany and a Rodbach version in the U.S.
Yes, and Bob was the Rodbach in the U.S.
And the Radbach kennel, I mean, it's a mix of, the stuff that they were mixing over there. It was Wasserschling and
yes,
Blitzdorf. And
yes.
I mean, so you can look at the pedigrees and see. And would you say, was it Lutz that was one of the more influential dogs from?
To him. He loved that dog.
Him meaning Holcomb or?
Bob Holcomb. That dog's portrait in his kennel in Washington. There's this big, beautiful portrait hung in the kennel.
Was he a big dog?
Yeah.
Good sized liver male.
I mean, he's kind of one of your foundational Rodbach dogs, right?
Yes.
And so there was him, and I've seen pictures of him in some of the good books. And then there was Bimbo, right?
Right.
He came over.
Yeah.
In the womb.
Bimbo upset the Northwest.
Yeah. How'd he do that?
He got Dog of the Year in the Northwest 5 times.
So the field trial stuff was already existed and going on, right?
Yes.
It was going.
Yeah, for about 10 years.
10 years.
So really, it was in its infancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Bob had trained other dogs for other people. Ken Jacobson had Brittany's that are in the Hall of Fame.
Brittany.
And 2, I believe.
Yeah.
And Holcomb trained him and handled him for Dog of the Year in the Northwest. He ended up with 13 Dog of the Year awards.
Not all short hairs?
No.
Yeah. So a lot of other breeds.
Mainly
not a
short
lot,
hairs.
mostly short hairs. I think 1 wire hair. And I know the 2 Brittany's of Ken Jacobson.
The 2 Brittany's of Ken's.
And
that's the statue at the Tennessee Hall of Fame. You walk in
front, there's a Brittany,
this big bronze
Brittany of
that dog.
And it's the one Holcomb.
Waken Jeff or Waken Bing, one of them.
Yeah.
Waken is was Jacobson's.
As a joke,
name.
they did. His son Mark had a Brittany, and they registered him as a Rodbach. So there's always a little humor.
So a little mixing there, a little.
Yeah.
Didn't set well with some people, but it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Bimbo
was a phenomenal nose. He won because of that. That nose was amazing.
And his style and intensity. He had a 12 o'clock tail, and he was just one of those. So you pop a point and boom.
So he's a dog you walk behind. You saw him perform.
Yes.
We saw him.
And our dog, recent dog, Rowdy is fairly similar in performance and style and
so
intensity.
the recreation maybe you're as close as
close as you can get it.
Yeah, when he was on his top behavior and all that, he was very good.
Yes.
So Bimbo was a well-behaved dog.
Perfect.
Easy to
spoil rotten.
Perfect.
Yeah.
To have done what he did, he was very
amazing.
Very consistent and really good.
He was an honest dog.
Mm-hmm. So Grit out of,
he's more Lutz.
Yeah, but he's
both.
Lutz and Bimbo were grandparents.
Okay.
And Lutz was a double grandparent on one side.
And he looked more. Holcomb said Grit was as close to Lutz of any dog he had.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's, I think, part of why he favored that dog, because it reminded him of Lutz.
Uh-huh.
And the dog was naturally gifted.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't know that, but
we don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he told me more than once, that's as close as you can get to Lutz right there.
Mm-hmm.
And people have said now that Rowdy was the closest to Bimble that they've seen.
Okay.
But that was,
So some of your
fairly
notable
recent.
dogs, first one was Grit, became a,
Field champion age 2.
okay,
Never ran in juvenile.
okay. Then after him, it was Rowdy,
No.
Trey.
We had Trey and Rebel the same age.
well, Gus was the next.
Oh, Gus, yeah. Timberlane's Grits Gus. And when Bob had the cancer and he was getting really bad, he sent his clients to Bob Dietering. And it was Doug Schomburger, us, and a couple of, and so Bob got Gus. And
Dietering, yeah.
Dieter.
Bob Dietering, yeah. And he started campaigning with Gus. And Gus, he won
Won a
horses, money,
Saddles,
I mean,
shotguns.
he
He was
probably
a big shooting
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he won a whole bunch of NGSPA regional champions.
American Field.
Gotcha.
American Field, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I don't know exactly what phase it was, but Peggy Davis brought Gus home from Dietering, who was in Arizona training. And she wanted him to have an amateur title. So I got to handle him one spring season. And we entered 20 trials, and he won 12, or he placed in 12 and won 8.
Wow.
And he was number one for the spring in the GSPCA ranking. I think he ended up finishing number 2 for that year.
And this is Gus.
This is Gus, yeah. So it was just, Holcomb trained, and then Dietering got
Yeah, and that
most of the
caused a little
credit.
friction. They go, no, he wasn't Holcomb trained. No, he was trained
And Dan
originally
Hoke
by
actually worked for Bob Dietering and helped train him.
Who did?
Dan
Dan
Hoke,
Hoke.
Dan Hope.
Dunford Kennel.
Okay.
You got to
What was-
start working with Bob.
What was Gus's registered name?
Timberlane's Grits Gus.
Yeah, it's Gus. Okay.
And he had a real German look, the knot on the head,
All the
Yeah.
bump.
long hound ear,
Yeah.
the long
Gotcha,
ear.
Gotcha.
And he was a liver roan
All right.
and longer body. Like the Bimble look is more square. The Lutz look is a little longer body.
Yep.
Bigger
So-
dog, yeah.
So then after Gus, it was,
Then it was Trey and Rebel.
okay.
Are
All these dogs ended up being field champions.
Yes.
And what other, did any of them run in national level? But you said Holcomb didn't really, he didn't
Holcomb
really
never
believe
went,
in that.
so, yeah.
He didn't want to go to the big, like all age type stuff, right?
He was upset about the big running dogs coming in, and
Uh-huh.
he was also upset he was upset with the parent club when they wouldn't let the pros be judges, and he felt the judges, who better
Wait a minute. You're saying the pros couldn't be judged? I thought the pros were judges all the time.
They are now, but back then they wouldn't let a professional trainer judge at the nationals.
Well, then who judged?
Amateurs.
Yeah.
Bob?
It just didn't make sense.
Oh, you became,
No,
Oh,
he didn't.
I never
He didn't.
judged an
They asked him, Bob
Not a
goes, I'm
national,
not
but-
doing it."
Yeah.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and he was upset. He was upset about a couple of things. So Bob stayed in the Northwest, in the West Coast.
Yeah.
He didn't go to the big
And
stuff.
he didn't want, because of his war wound, it was hard for him to ride the way you would have to ride for running all age.
Couldn't do it
And he
physically.
just, and then his strength was broke dogs and
Gun dogs.
real busy, hard working, hard running, hard charging bird
Well,
dogs.
He loved gun dogs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
First trial we went to, before our dog was even, I think, running, he had 12 gun dogs he ran. 10 of them were broke. So you had to beat his best dog.
Wow.
So if you had 20 dogs in there, the other 8 had to be better than his best one. And that's how come he's got so many field champions.
I gotcha.
He was
His
he was
dogs
hard
were-
to beat.
His dogs were absolutely perfect for, years and years.
Perfect meaning
Broke the
broke,
wing and
yeah,
shot,
right.
solid, honored. He'd turn 6 dogs loose. One dog would find a bird, and he'd have 5 of them honoring, standing just rock solid
Training. Yeah.
with no other handler. Then he'd go up there, and it was just vocal, and he just did it the right way.
Isn't that amazing?
magic.
And this is before the days of
He
Shock
didn't.
collars.
Yeah, he didn't use
collars.
shot
And,
collars.
you
yeah.
know, so,
Didn't have
there
them.
might have had some. I don't even. They probably didn't exist yet, did they?
No.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, they had some, but,
but they were harsh.
They weren't
Hound
sophisticated
dogs.
like you have today, where they
Yeah.
could dial them
Yeah.
up and down.
Curlier
yeah.
hair.
Yeah, yeah.
But what he used the buggy whip with that end of the tip,
just
the leather on it,
Uh-huh.
and he could reach out and get him in the back of the legs.
Uh-huh.
You know, that was. But he knew I was traveling a lot with my job, and this is the dumbest thing I ever did. No, not really. Done a lot of dumb things, but
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
but he says, Karen, I'm running out of my buggy whip, and you're going to England. I go, yeah. He says, pick me up. So I went into Harrods. You know, the saddle shop in Harrods is amazing. You go in and see all these leather goods, and I go, oh, there's buggy whip. So I buy the buggy whip, and they put it along too. Well, it was the beginning of my trip, and when you go on these trips, you go 6, 7 countries. So I'm going through customs in every country with this tube. And they go, what's in the tube? And I have to say, oh, whip. And, and I told them I am never doing that again.
Yeah. My husband
That's
and
your
I.
last,
This is
it's your last whip you're getting out of me. So we can order them.
yeah. That's
He
awesome.
got his buggy whip. I was proud. I brought him his buggy whip.
but it was a fancy leather.
Yeah, it was really class.
Yeah.
So
Now they're
the
just
bird.
nylon and
Did he use what kind of birds was he using for his training? Then were they?
Can't remember. He
He
had
had
pheasants too.
he had pheasant. Well, whatever he could get, but pheasants and chuckers.
Yeah.
I don't think he used many quail. I think because they didn't
Yeah.
in Western Washington don't survive real well.
The
They're
dogs
too
don't
wet.
do so well.
Yeah, and if you use them out in the field, if
They
it's
get
too
wet.
wet, they'll almost die. In the
What about pigeons? Did he use pigeons?
oh, lots of
Oh,
pigeons.
he had
Yeah.
pigeons.
He had
Our dogs
Home-
did not like
homing
pigeons.
yeah. He didn't like using them either. And he would say that openly that he didn't like them. And it was because I don't know what his reasoning was, but he didn't like the way the dogs handled them.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't the same as a wild bird. And so he was big into telling you, take your dog hunting and just follow him and learn what you're supposed to know from the dog.
Right. Did he? So is he an avid wild bird hunter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
you were too.
Yeah. Not as avid as a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, but you did a lot of chucker hunting.
Oh yeah. I
Pheasant.
became an avid chucker hunter but a very poor finder.
But he had his own hunting property
Yeah.
in Eastern Washington. And if you were lucky, you got an invitation.
From Holcomb.
Mhm.
Yeah. And he told me where to go hunting chuckers on the Yakima area where he hunted and a lot of his clients hunted.
Okay.
So I knew all the canyons, and the
Gotcha.
ridges, and all the water spots, and all that.
So let's chat about the Greif dog a little bit. Like, he's a key dog in this region and in the breed.
Yes.
So, Holcomb has the Rodbach line he's brought over, which has its own gene pool.
Right.
Then along comes this
Dog.
Greif dog. Let's just go down let's talk that story again about how all that unfolded. 'Cause I love the story. I don't ever get
tell
tired.
her you, Bob.
You go ahead.
Well, the way we were told, Bob Holcomb, John Merrill, and Don Miner, they were young men hunting, and they were coming
San
by
Jose area,
San Jose.
California.
Yeah,
What
California.
area?
Near Fort Ord.
Fort Ord. They were still, it was still military at that time.
So we're talking what, 50s or?
Yeah, 50s.
Yeah.
He's
So this is John Merrill, Ralph Parks,
no,
No,
Don Miner.
Don Miner.
Don Miner, and his kennel name was
Von Thalberg.
Von
Oh
Thalberg.
yeah.
Okay.
Von Thal-
And Holcomb, and they
And Merrill lived in Bakersfield, right?
Yes.
Well, I think he
he
was San
settled
Jose
there.
at that time.
Yeah.
All right. And you said something once about them being called the three
amigos.
The amigos. Okay, so they were the three amigos
hunting.
Yeah. And they see this dog in the field and they're admiring his application. They're very impressed with it. So they pull over. And it's a young
Military
guy running his dog. Mm-hmm. And they end up making friends, and it's Greif. And everybody thinks it's a line or a bloodline. No, that's his call name, Greif.
Right.
It's not the kennel. The kennel's the long.
Yes. I'm looking at it.
Yes. Yeah. And he
when I'm sober, I can actually say it.
He was like 3, 4, 5, something like that. And he was the first owner of the dog.
You don't know his name.
I can't.
Yeah.
We were
Hopkins
told
was the name.
The second owner.
I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
And
but this soldier
had the dog.
Brought him over from Austria.
He's not German.
Yeah, that's right. The dog's not German. This soldier.
But they're side by side, the two countries.
Sure.
So you know the gene pool's got to be there.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So anyway, they saw a litter on the ground he had produced, and it was impressive to Holcomb.
He talked somebody into breeding to that dog the first time.
The dog still belonged to the soldier.
Yes, and it was just he and his hunting buddies from the base, and I mean Johnny Merrill was. I don't know if he was in the military with them or not, but maybe he was working his own dogs. I don't know the particulars there, but Don Miner ended up being a school professor, and so I don't know if he was in the service or not, but they all got together because of the dogs and hunting. And so they, I don't know what the hunting conditions were quite like, but I assume it was similar to Eastern Washington cropland. Mm-hmm. So they saw this dog out there, and Holcomb made him stop and look at it, and it was because of his exposure in Germany to see similar performance from the better dogs in Germany. Which was a kind of a rarity, I guess would be the term in the U.S. The dogs were just sort of like some of the lesser known pointing breeds here that they didn't really perform. They weren't fast and snappy and stylish. They just point, so
nothing to really grab you.
Yeah. And so it was, the style and dog intensity was something that he had in spades above what the rest of the dogs they were working with were exposed to. Mm-hmm. And so he talked, I believe it could have been Don Miner into breeding somebody. And then I know Gretchen v. Greif came out of that breeding, and Ralph Barks maybe it was Ralph Barks that,
we get the name so confused after all these years, but when they saw the pups he produced, that's when there was a major push, start breeding to this dog.
Yeah.
So I want to really clear this up here. The guy that originally brought him over still owned him.
Yeah.
And they bred to him a few times. Yeah. Some people bred to him and wow, these are nice pups.
Yep.
And somebody bought him from that.
Yeah.
I believe it's Hopkins.
Yeah.
And he's in the photo, I believe.
I think that's right. I think I
yes.
remember seeing him with this. So he owned the dog then.
Yes.
And what we're talking about, the dog was like, 5, 6 years old?
Right in there. And his trainer was Stan Head. And when Hopkins died, Head kept the dog.
Okay.
He died with the trainer.
And then this guy campaigned him, right? He started
to campaign him.
How old was he when he started trialing him?
He was 4 or 5.
6, 7, I don't know.
And
because you mentioned once in a conversation we had that he got titled at like 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
He was an older dog. And everybody says, these dogs, if they're not titled by 3, you can't do it. I'm like, that's crazy. We've seen dogs at all ages title.
Yeah.
Where do these rules come from?
Yeah, he was still running strong, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was able to win. Did you ever see that dog personally?
No.
Way before your time, right?
Yeah.
But he was... you probably were starting to see. You probably saw a lot of his offspring, direct
Absolute.
offspring. Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
and people talk about the Greif look. That's the look people today are talking about. Greif didn't look like that. I
Right.
mean, you see in the photo what he looked like.
Right. He was a roan, looked like a pretty good sized dog too.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call him big. He'd be medium, but he didn't have this massive head that they keep calling the Greif head. It's not Greif. I don't know where that head came from, but that isn't Greif.
So Holcomb bred to him?
Yes.
Yeah. He
His first
field champion was Junga v. Greif. And that was, he bred Greif to, apparently the dog he had hunting was out of some
German
big winning American dog at the time.
When he saw Greif?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he bred to Greif and got Junga von Hunsheimer Kogel, which was his own personal dog, and it was his first field champion. But he was not a Radbach. So.
No, he hadn't done the Radbach yet.
Gotcha. I was just kind of looking at this. This is Sebastian's pedigree. I was kind of seeing if he's in here. I haven't spotted it yet, but anyway.
Greif is in there.
I know, but the Junga.
There.
Oh, yeah, no, Junga.
No.
We don't have any Junga
You don't
anywhere.
see any Jungas showing up anywhere.
Okay.
I don't know what it was, if he was bred to anybody. So
Here's your dog, Rough and Rowdy. I got his pedigree here.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so a lot of people bred to Greif.
Yes.
And they were mixing
whatever
then
they had.
Holcomb started mixing the Rodbach into the Greif.
Mhm.
And that's why you always see Greif in there.
Right.
Because he believed in that dog. He promoted that dog.
Yeah.
He was a big PR guy for Greif. He did. He loved the dog.
Good.
And he spoke very highly of the dog when we spoke to him.
Did he, the Kahuatek dog, was that his dog? Am I saying that?
The people that own Bimbo own Kahuatek.
Yeah.
It's a
Kahuatek.
son of Bimbo.
Gotcha. And did you guys see him?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
He was well, let's see. When I started going out with Bob for training, Kahuatek was his next dog of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the star of the training classes when I first started going out and watching.
Gotcha.
And I still believe he was the best bird field dog I've ever seen.
Okay.
He was he'd go lackadaisical around the back course for 20 minutes, hit the bird field, and 8 minutes of sheer terror, just zipping out there and slamming on points and retrieving a dog and going on a point with a bird in his mouth. And I mean, it was every time it was like, for some reason, he just absolutely kicked it into gear when he hit the bird field.
Right.
And then he was flawless.
Gotcha.
And then he went home to his owners for
And they let him run free on the beach and chase seagulls. And then they have to start training them all over again.
Yeah. And so gave Bridget a chance to come in there
Gave us all a shot
and
at
be
it.
the next big winner there for the dog of the year. So, and Bridget was interesting. She ran into some nationals for, amateur and
Bridget was your dog.
No, it was Jesse Orm but it was a Bimbo
client.
Progeny kind of a.
Yes.
Anyway,
strong female.
Strong,
really
strong female. It was his second to the last dog of the year. And I actually handled her in the nationals and then tried to show off and lost her. So don't tell Jesse's family.
What do you mean by you tried to show off?
Well, Holcomb showed off because his dogs were broke. And if the dog was out there on point, he'd go, whoa. And he'd walk up there past her and turn around and send her for a retrieve or whatever. Well, I tried to do the same thing. The dog was on point and it was a kill bird. I don't remember exactly how it was, but I had to chase a bird around or somehow. Anyway, the bird landed beyond where I mean, the dog was closer to the bird than me. And I tried to walk up and show off that she would be totally broke, and she broke.
Oh, I gotcha.
I didn't send her, but I had, she had plenty of time to have been sent. But Holcomb would have walked up and enforced the
So you're saying the bird was flushed and shot, and you didn't send her when you should have because you were showing off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's like, okay.
And everybody said she'd have made the second series in the amateur.
She humbled you.
What she said is, you're no Bob Holcomb.
That's exactly right. But guess what? Dave McGinnis handled her the next year for a placement in the gun dog.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about Dave McGinnis too.
Special guy.
It's like that whole circle of connection there. Like, he was the guy, right? In your all's.
He was a very special trainer, and Holcomb, McGinnis, and Merrill were all friends, and they handled each other's dogs for different events. There was an understanding there.
Well, they trained together. Well, different times. Yeah, McGinnis and Johnny Merrill never trained together that I know of.
No, I think he did actually.
Okay,
but they were friendly.
They are all friends.
Yeah.
There was a lot more professionalism between the pros back when we started.
Yes.
It was the whole aspect was, I believe it was, at least through Holcomb and the ones we dealt with, that the best dog's got to win, and you got to beat my best dog. I mean, it was that kind of a
healthy competition.
Not like I could, stack the judges and somehow just ignore the fact that your dog was better.
Right. Yeah. You had to.
You had to win.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about some of the best dogs you saw in that era. Lancer D.
He was a great dog.
Yeah.
You didn't see him run much. I mean, other than maybe his butt off the line. But I judged Ehrlicher's Abe, and he was a wonderful dog. But our dog Grit and Abe were very similar in the way they performed and ran. Abe was a bigger running, really smooth, no nonsense dog.
Class act.
Yeah, but a true all age, whereas Grit was
gun dog.
Shooting dog.
Yeah. For then. Now it'd be a gun dog.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And Lancer D, all age?
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
All I remember is I wasn't out there. You couldn't go out there and just watch him because he was gone. I mean, moved, but powerful animal.
Gotcha.
True athlete.
And what about Byers Evolution? Did you run with him? Or?
I don't remember seeing him.
No.
I don't.
No.
He was always in the top 10 in the winning. I think at that time Dave had gone completely.
Wasn't he being handled by Johnny Merrill?
He did pass him around, and other people ran him. He talked about that.
He wasn't running in our local circuit like the other dogs did.
No.
Yeah, I think he was going south more.
Yeah.
Utah.
Even went to the Midwest.
Yeah, Idaho, Idaho, that kind of stuff.
Was Blick von Schimbeck in this area?
Oh.
No.
I just remember seeing that name on the pedigrees, and I'm trying to remember. No.
He was brother to Kit von Schimbeck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was for Johnny Merrill, or Don Miner's dogs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Von Talberg's.
Okay.
And Fritz II and all that.
Right.
So.
Okay. Did you ever see von Thalberg's Fritz II?
No.
Yeah? No?
We didn't travel at that time in our activities.
We just paid bills. We'd go to some. That's in the peak of our careers too. But when we could, we went to them.
I got you. Okay.
And they didn't come up and challenge Holcomb much either.
They didn't come here.
Yeah.
To Washington because he was established. He was hard to beat.
Mm-hmm. So then Holcomb, you said something earlier. He got cancer.
Yeah, that was so sad.
Yeah, at the end there. Yeah.
How old was he when that started?
I have no idea how old he was. Yeah.
I think he was real quiet about it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I knew he was off when we'd go out training and watch him train Gus and stuff. And you could tell something was off. And then finally he told us
that I can't do this anymore.
I can't do it. I'm done. And that's where I
told us to take our dogs to Bob Dietering.
Okay.
So, and he died May 31st, 1990.
Yeah.
And when we knew it was getting serious, it was about February of that year. I decided I want to nominate him Hall of Fame. And I called up Jim McHugh and I said, I enjoyed talking to Jim. He was a good guy. So I said, we've got to do a write-up for the parent club and to get it in the Hall of Fame. And he says, I'm going to write the whole story. I'm going to interview Bob. I'm going to interview everybody. Help me connect up with everyone. He wanted to tell the Holcomb story. And I thought it was phenomenal that he did. He stepped up to that. But when he got it all written up, you'll see in the articles that they published in the Parent Club magazine that it starts off with who the hell is Bob Holcomb?
Yeah.
And that came
from Gene
Schultz, who was president of the Parent Club, GSPCA. Mm-hmm. And when he was nominated Hall of Fame, Schultz goes, well, who the hell's Bob Holcomb? And
was he serious? Was that a
serious?
Yeah.
He was serious. He didn't know who, because he didn't go to the Nationals.
I gotcha.
Okay. And he's a West Coast guy. So that's why McHugh started his article.
Well, see, McHugh was a representative for the Parent Club from the, Idaho or Northwest or something.
He was our representative.
So he was on the board of the Parent Club.
It was just
for your region.
When we saw that article, when we saw it published, I went, "Oh my God!" It was funny, but he did a great job telling the whole story. He did an honest, unbiased story, and he wasn't a client of Holcomb's. He did handle dogs for him when he asked them, an amateur stake or something. McHugh would handle them for him.
Gotcha.
And he enjoyed working on them, but
I'll just say real quick that article is in the Shorthair Journal.
Yes.
For November, December 2020, September, October 2020 when it started, and then it finished up in January, February of 2021.
Yeah, that's the second time it was published.
Oh, okay.
The original was in 91. It got published.
Okay.
And in the Shorthair Journal and the GSP News when it was around. But he called us. He called to talk to us the second week of May. And that's when he knew the article was happening. He just said, don't make a big thing about all this. That's how he was. And he said, there's a couple things I want you to promise.
It's Bob Holcomb.
This is Bob Holcomb. He said, I want you to promise me to protect my good name. And the second was, I want you to continue reading the line the way I've explained to you everything. And please promote the Rodbach for me. And he transferred it to us at that time to do it. We were surprised. I mean, we were like, we weren't doing this to, that's a burden kind of, but I promised him. And then 2 weeks later, he had passed. So, we stepped into it and started doing it, but you kind of feel funny,
Right.
But out of respect for the man.
And then we couldn't because we didn't have a big, real kennel set up to be handling a lot of
we weren't
breedings
professional
and all that.
breeders.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was, if we happened to have it or there was a point in time down the road, we could put this dog and that dog together to do what we thought was the way he would want it.
And he mentored us on all our litters when we were breeding. He had us breeding to grit to certain people. He told us who to breed to and when to do it. And he was constantly instructing us on things like that.
Gotcha. He was, we kind of skipped over that, but he was a strong believer in line breeding.
Very much so.
Right. Yeah. And was he acquainted at all with Bob Whaley? I think you mentioned his
They
name.
knew each other.
Right. So
they chatted.
Whaley. Yeah.
In fact, I believe he truly set it up because I didn't believe the call was really who it was when the call came into our house. And he said it was Bob Whaley. And I, sure. And because I knew who he was at the time. And he called to talk to me about the litter and complimented us what we were doing. And he says, keep doing what you're doing. And he sent us some clients, and it was really him. But I at first thought someone was putting me on, a field trial person. But it turned out to be true. And I believe it was Bob Holcomb
that set it up.
Set up that call. He said, call them, encourage them. That's who Bob was. He was always trying to encourage people.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's talk about line breeding, about your belief in it, and like, are you sorry? Have you ever been sorry? Have you ever doubted the pathway you've been on? It's like, because we know there's lots of different lines of thought out there.
Yeah.
Let's just, I don't know.
Today, what we know now versus what we knew then, we probably would have even done tighter line breeding.
Mm-hmm.
Because now with all the testing and everything, you can find out on genetics and stuff how clean the line is. The Germans did all the work. We didn't have to.
Yeah.
But, that old school thinking, you don't breed tight like that.
Yeah, they expected all kinds of disastrous results.
Yes.
People here
yeah, in America, and it's not true. I mean, it's, I'd be excited with a 30% coefficient.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people are getting like 27, and they're getting great pups. You're controlling the genetics. You're doing what the Germans did. It's predictable results. And you can see it in our latter litters here, the last 4 or 5. It's a clone. They're clones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very predictable. And you wouldn't stick with it if you're getting mediocrity.
Yeah.
If it's declining. It's
problems,
gotten better.
Yeah. Right. So, that's another good point. It's like you've been doing this now, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years?
76.
Yeah.
75, whatever.
I mean, that's a long history.
Yeah.
A gene pool that you've not strayed from, correct?
Right.
And you're still consistently producing
We
dogs.
think very, very good dogs.
They're good bird dogs. They're great hunting dogs. Excellent family dogs.
Yep.
And occasionally you get a customer that wants to campaign. Like we've got a couple right now with their pups doing quite well. And we're not pushing field trials. I mean, I feel like the field trial crowd now is in a big hurry. They want to FC at H2 and then on to the next dog.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole different when we were getting in it, these are our buddies, these dogs. They're our hunting partners. And if you can compete and they win, hooray, right? But there's a change. I've never really, Bob and I haven't pushed anybody to do field trials. And if someone says, well, I want to try Navdar, I want to do shoot to retrieve or this or that, go for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These dogs are adaptable. They'll do it. We used ours for ducks, everything. These dogs were used in Germany on big game. They're bear and deer over there. Our dogs have gone after bear.
Yeah. Grit. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to take down a bear.
Wow.
And they start baying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in them. People think they're bird dogs, but they're originally they're fur and feather, and they're game dogs. They'll go for the big guys. Some people have different things they like about each. We were conditioned to like these Rodbachs and their traits. Mm-hmm. So we're promoting it. I'm not saying they're better than anybody else. That's just who they are.
So there's a great one right there. So like in my case, I got on the line breeding bandwagon 30 years ago. I believed in it. I don't even know why, what led me to that. I looked into, researched it. I studied about different people and breeders, and I saw that. I'll go, yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go. Set a type, right? You're supposed to be, how else would you set a type?
Right.
You're
how do you know?
You're creating a family, and it's you have a breed, and then you create your, I'll call it your recipe, your family of dogs that's going to have your look or the look you like. That's one of the things that when I started breeding dogs, I had the fortune to run into the right people that kind of had, I'll call it some vision. And they're like, look, here's what you have to do. You have to establish a vision for what you think the dog ought to be like, and then pursue that and try to set it as a type. And the only way you can do that is by line breeding.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And I don't know if there's any other way.
There is no other way.
And which book, I think it was Whaley's book I read, where he said, he talked about outcrossing versus line breeding and the odds of you producing, like if you have if you go down the road of outcrossing, the odds of you reproducing a great dog that, he said it's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, right? Versus, you you line breed on that dog and concentrate the genes.
Yeah.
And so then now that kind of takes us down that discussion where people that maybe have some understanding of genetics go, you got a strand of beads there, one from the mother, one from the father. And the more homozygous those strands of beads are,
right,
the better probability there is for that
predictability.
It's common sense. If there's a bunch of hidden, so the recessive stuff that's on those strings of beads that is hidden, if you have a mixed, I'll call it heterozygous gene pool that you start line breeding on, and that's when I want to dive into a little bit, is like, that's when people, they say, okay, I'm going to try this line breeding thing. Their gene pool maybe isn't already that cleaned up, let's call it. And then they do a little line breeding and they get smacked around because bad things pop up that they didn't know was there.
Yes.
Right. And then they go, oh, line breeding's bad.
Yes.
No, line breeding's not bad. What line breeding did, and here's the other thing I've heard people talk about, line breeding creates this, creates that. No, line breeding doesn't create anything.
It has to be there.
It reveals things.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
It's kind of like, I always heard that expression that adversity makes you stronger or creates better character.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I think adversity reveals character. Yeah. Line breeding reveals things that may, so if you have a gene pool, like you guys were talking about, the Rodbach gene pool came over here already. It's kind of like a house that's already had a lot of work done. It's been cleaned up. It doesn't have to be totally redone. You've already, you're taking over where somebody else left off.
I guess I was a skeptic on line breeding initially, but we were listening to other short hair breeders. And, oh no, just that's too tight. You can't. I mean, and the Radbachs are too tight in a sense as Radbachs.
Oh yeah, so you've been criticized for sticking with your guns, right?
Right. Yes. And initially, I guess I happened to do, from my own background in science in college and stuff, I knew a little bit about genetics and different things, and also classes in statistics. And so when you start talking genetics, you're talking pure statistics. Mm-hmm. But then it gets real complicated when you do multiple genes, and controlling, and traits and stuff. And so when Karen was she was doing the coordination for the breeding, I would say, we'll see what happens. And I'm thinking, okay, we may have a mistake in here. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting when we outcrossed.
We got mistakes.
We got, mistakes. And people talked about, well, your line breeding, you're going to clean up all these issues with other dogs. They want to improve bidability or bird finding, all those things. And we were just trying to perpetuate what we had. And so I never noticed that we had an overabundance of any problems. And if we ever had a dog that for some reason didn't fit our view of what the breed standard was trying to do, we just wouldn't breed it. Mm-hmm. And we got to the point where we actually had to search to find complementary bloodlines, basically the Greif line, to mix with our Radbachs with the frozen semen that we had, to try to not overdo the concentration. In a sense, we didn't have the bitches, we just had semen. Mm-hmm. So so we had to create a complementary set of bitches, and it took us a little while or her to do that.
And because you guys weren't set up to have 30 dogs,
we couldn't do what Bob Whaley did with the big kennel and do some serious culling, and mm-hmm. His culling was probably sending them out to hunters and having them fixed so they wouldn't reproduce. Mm-hmm. But so the line breeding, we did it so much tighter than what seemed comfortable, but holy cow, these pups are just fine.
Yeah.
And
so you were a little worried, or you
initially, and then they came out with the coefficient and then the testing. for
The testing
the
is
traits.
just reconfirmed we did it.
And the testing,
way.
and people just said, okay, why are you having your dogs tested? Well, we don't know.
We want to confirm.
And so all of a sudden we get this thing back that it's clear of all the genes they test for that have problems.
Gotcha.
Health
So,
genes
you
or
know,
whatever
so
they are.
this testing you're talking about, what's it called?
Well, we
Genetic testing you're doing right
yes.
now. You've been, what, in the last 5 years or?
Oh, it's been longer than that.
Yeah, just occasionally, just to,
yeah.
yeah.
As-
You'll do a genetic screen or
Yeah.
whatever on your
like
dog.
our
we
la-
had- Well, no, that's
Our
different.
last dog right now, we're waiting right now for the test to come back. But, you know, the testing on dogs has improved greatly. And
Mhm.
people go, why do you do that? Well, not everything on pedigree is the truth.
Yeah.
And we know that. So we wanted, it's another step ensuring that we're really breeding what we're supposed to be breeding. And that's what that testing confirmed, that we did get there.
Mhm.
And we protected what was given to us from Germany. It came in that way. We didn't make it.
Mhm. So you think it's like this gene pool you're working with right now is just like what you started with?
as close as we could
As tight
we
as you
could
can get it.
with whatever dogs were available for that whole time period we worked.
It's as
And-
clean as you can get it.
Gotcha. And the dogs that, what would say your foundation? What are the main dogs you're line breeding on? Would you say?
Primarily Bimbo, Radbach's Bimbo,
Okay.
because he's the closest one physically and the traits, at least that I view in the field as being more important than size. So
I just heard a wolf.
coyote.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I've been trying to get a good quail call, but
Yeah.
I can't get it.
Joyce, our dog's crazy.
Well, are there other people affiliated with you that are like working with you? On
No,
this?
not really.
They say, they
say-
come and they go.
Yeah.
You hear all this stuff and they say, I want to do this, want to learn. And then you find out it's how much can I get for that pup?
And it's ego and the more the friendship combination of egos. My buddy has this dog and it's really good, but and so they don't look at the what the potential outcome of the offspring of the breeding. They don't have a clue.
Okay.
It's just that they're going on reputation.
They want fast, instant
Yeah.
results.
So the baton right now is in your hands only.
Yeah, and there are a couple people saying there's a couple there's a young gentleman in Idaho that's talking to us, and there's a couple other people. And I've learned in old age, just wait and see who these people are and how serious they are,
Yeah.
before you go all the way.
We don't have any magic bullet thing to,
Yeah. All we can do is help.
yeah.
And it is show them what we learned. If you want to learn from us, fine.
Mhm.
If you don't, okay.
And you use a computer program to put your pedigrees together?
We have someone do it for us. We don't do it.
Okay. You got a person that puts them
Yes.
together for you. And what are they using? Are they using CompuPet or are they using
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I saw
Yeah.
your pedigrees
Yeah.
Yeah.
looked a little different than mine.
Pet,
Yeah.
What do you guys use?
Breedmate.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Do you guys also have CompuPet or
Nope, just Breedmate, and then some stuff I can't talk about yet.
okay. Okay.
There's something coming down the line.
But going back to what you said a second ago, I think this is like you mentioned that there's people who I would call it put pressure on. They want you. Why aren't you breeding to our dogs? Why aren't you
Right.
breeding to other dogs? And
Right.
but there's one option is that they think, well, you're saying in a way that, well, our dogs are better. We don't want to breed to your dogs because they're not as good as our dogs. And you're shaking
no.
your head,
Yeah,
and I'm
but
like,
that's-
I agree with you. And it's like I've also felt like that's, there may be people that think, wow, you just are, what do you want to call
Snob.
it? Kennel blind, or you're
Yeah.
or you're like, you think, wow, mine's the best. So I don't want to, you have nothing to offer me. And my statement there is that's not the issue.
It is not
It's
the
a-
issue.
You've made a choice. There's a path you're following,
Right.
and you
Stuck with
want to stick with it.
Right.
It's not a statement about the quality of other dogs around you.
Yes.
We're not saying we're superior to any other.
I think the other
breeder.
thing too is we've had breedings of our dogs and offspring and
Well, that's-
similar ones.
What a great segue there. You can talk. Go ahead.
And anyway, we've watched their pups and saw that outcrosses have more problems than you might say educated line breeding or semi-line breeding. If you know all the offspring on a pedigree, there's more dogs that I do not want in a pedigree than those that I do. From a measurement against what our dog's traits and looks and all that are, and abilities.
But here's one of the things that so you're doing your work,
right?
Let's say we're sitting here, there's 3 parties at this table. There's you guys and Charles and myself.
Right. And
each one of us has our vision or our portrait we're painting.
Okay.
And we've created our, we're
image.
Now, somebody, so you're creating first of all, each one of us is creating I'll call it a purity or purer gene pool. Sorry. Then someone else can take that and they could, if they wanted to do like a blending, kind of like I'll think, let's go back to these big 3 that I always call it, the Axel and Greif and Cave on Wildberg dogs that I look at and go, well, look to me, what people did was blend those 3 gene pools to create a new chocolate cake.
Yes.
Well, somebody can take then, like outcrossing can work out really well if you take these 2 line bred gene pools or 3, mix them together, and then go forward with.
But you have to do proper selection
and generations
of all the traits and
even go back to. You can even take an offspring of that, then the F1 generation back to one of those pure gene pools. It's kind of what Bob Whaley's
that's exactly
philosophy was.
That is it.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
So, that's where I think people.
That's where you're invigorating a line.
Exactly.
But it's a choice.
Yes.
Not just happenstance.
And see, then you're also breeding to gene pools that there's a lot of information you have.
Yes.
It isn't like there's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in here.
Right.
I see the animal standing here and he looks great, but
yes,
what's there that I don't see under the rug?
And we get calls like, I want to breed to your dogs because I want your dogs to fix this and this. And my comeback to those calls is there's so many great dogs out there. Why do you have to fix your dog? Why don't you get a dog that doesn't need to be fixed? And it bothers me that they want to come to my dog, to fix something. Right. That's just the craziest thing to breed, the way to breed.
Do you want a dog or do you want this dog?
Yeah.
And they all want this dog. And,
yeah.
And it was created by this combination.
You don't just fix something. You don't put parts together and get this dog.
Right.
And that's how they approach it. They don't know generations because we deliberately, when we breed, we look for a high set tail. And a high head.
Don't want a low tail set.
Oh, God. But the German dogs came in that way.
With low tail sets?
Absolutely.
For the most part, yes.
Really?
Most of them. A lot of them. Well, look at some of the photos. They're like, ooh. But that's us. We're conditioned.
But, the ones, like Axel and Kay and Greif didn't have low tail sets.
No, but you saw a lot of them. And we always bred to the high.
Well, and the breed standards, they wanted a 9 o'clock tail.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah.
It wasn't important.
Original breed standard. Yeah.
We all like that high set.
And they didn't want sickle tail.
Right.
Well, that shows a pretty good intensity.
But the Germans only took the top third off, and people didn't understand that.
Oh gosh, what a great idea! Because I'm not an advocate of short tails.
Oh, I can't stand them.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be anything too long, that tail tells you so much about the dog.
The tail talks.
Yeah.
Watch the tail.
Just so
and you whack it off, then it's disgusting.
The ears and eyes.
Thank you for saying that.
But the traits that come in with these dogs, we try to promote that part of our line, the line that Bob Holcomb brought in and got established. We're trying our fine tuning, and it took us a couple generations where every pup in that litter is straight up.
Yeah.
And that's what
We've
we
got
want.
Quite a consistent litters now.
So do we want to talk about, we were the other day, we had a conversation about this, the personalities or what do we call it? The type dog you guys produce. Do you want to address that? Like you were talking about how some people call them soft. You even call them soft.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Can we go there?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're not, many times people see that or hear that, they go, oh, that's a negative thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, soft dog. Let's hear your views on that. And tell me what describe your dogs to me.
We think that it's a sign of
intelligence,
extreme intelligence,
Uh-huh.
and softness meaning I'm not going to jump in and be bullheaded if there might be a danger or something out there. So they're a little more cautious.
Right.
Typically, they.
What about taking pressure?
Right, and that I think goes into the home lovability aspect of these dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely love their owners.
So they have to. They respond differently to pressure.
Yes.
Than many other lines of dogs.
Yes. They're not kennel dogs.
And you can't. So your approach to training them has to be adjusted.
Yes.
Right.
And some of them are tough. There might be one that can take anything that the most hard-headed one can.
Yeah.
But across the board, if you're selling a pup, there's no guarantee that it's going to be tough or whatever. And we've got a few, the ones that do real well in the field are
tougher,
typically much tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Dame Sophia Radbach.
She's a tough girl.
For example.
Mm-hmm.
And Timberlane's Grits
the one there was a picture of. I have it over here.
Yeah. That's one of Tim Schilleris that he trained.
Yeah, she got a runner-up amateur national.
Okay.
She was a tough dog.
She was a tough dog. We've sold pups to guys that they kept track of them, and over 3,000 birds, all retrieved.
Mm-hmm.
They finally failed to make a retrieve, and they were 10 years old or something.
Mm-hmm.
That kind. These are dogs that are just really wired for the job.
Mm-hmm.
But on a whole, because we get guys that are guides, hunting guides and things, and they go, we've hunted over your dogs from our clients, brought your dogs.
Yes.
And I want them now. And I said, well, I have to honestly tell you, and I know people don't find this believable, but if they're raised in the home, and like in Germany, they were the poor man's dog. They were fed in the kitchen with the family, and they fed the family. I mean, they went out and got the deer or the birds, whatever. Mm-hmm. It was mainly upland. It wasn't bird dogs in Germany. It was the game. And they fed that poor family, whereas the Weimaraner was the baron's dog, the wealthy man.
Really? Yeah,
the German Shorthair was the more created to feed the family type of dog.
That's interesting.
So the way I heard it, they'd be right there feeding with the family, part of the family unit. Mm-hmm. Well, not all of them. I know as the kennels got developed and they got more strict about codes, but you'll hear it if you talk to Tyler or Tim. These dogs want to get inside your skin. Mm-hmm. They want inside of you. Mm-hmm. They're a part of you. And when you start putting them out in a kennel and cutting them off and making them more aloof in that kennel environment, mm-hmm. they can turn off. We've seen it. And I try to explain that to these guys that are hunters. They're not the best kennel dog. And everybody says, oh, you're babysitting these dogs. You're, being mm-hmm. too soft. Maybe we are. I'm just saying we haven't seen them excel in that more aloof, colder environment. They're better.
Can't turn off.
Yeah, that's a big part of our breeding program too. Standing Stone's breeding program is their companions. They're hunting companions. They're not. Right. They are going to be a companion more than they're going to be a hunting dog. There's only if you really push it, you can maybe get 4 months of hunting. They're going to be
part of your family.
Part of your family the rest of the time, and that's a pretty important aspect. Yes. I tell people all the time, if you're planning on, find a breeder is raising and cares for their dogs the same way that you will. Because if you get a Standing Stone dog or one of your dogs and you throw them in a kennel run, they're not going to do well.
They don't.
They want their connection with their people.
They need it.
And so it's just something that I don't sell dogs to people that, if they're not going to be in the house, sorry, I'm not the right breeder for you.
That's us too.
And
try to anyway. Yeah.
It really does. You can see the connection, and
They do.
it's a pretty important part.
They love
of the
they're in
dog's
their
life.
owners. And like Tim and Tyler both say, because they're training all different lines and breeds and everything. And they said, you can tell these dogs have the best
bond
way to
with-
describe it is they want to get inside you. They want to be you, part of you.
total pleasing. And
Yeah.
I guess that was Holcomb used the term biddability. And that was that
They'll do it out
They
of love
paid
versus
attention
fear.
Yeah,
to
there
the
you go.
trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that was his? Was that his insight too? Was he?
He
That how he
had
kinda
fear
approached
too,
But
There was
he wanted to bond
Respect.
with them.
he always
Yeah.
tried to bond with them.
and the one thing when you read the books and never put your dog away mad or after you correct him and let him finish on a positive note
Mhm.
and sweeten up the dog before he goes in the heads
Right.
back to the kennel.
Right.
And he did it with everyone, even though he might have just given a pretty good
Correction.
whip.
adjustment, and the dog knew it. I mean,
Mhm.
it was the dog gave him the royal finger, so he corrected him, but gave him a treat before he put him in, to go home to the kennel.
Positive.
Mhm.
And the dog just I mean, it just
Relaxed him.
you love me, I love you. It was a mutual respect kind of approach. There were a few non-short-hair dogs that approach didn't work with.
What I found with some of these dog trainers today, they have a set formula of training,
Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah, they're all forced to retrieve, force this, force that, and it's just these set of rules.
Mhm.
And if the dog can't fit that program, the dog's no good.
They don't make adjustments.
They
Yeah.
don't make adjustments,
They can't afford to.
and they're
'Cause
in a hurry.
They've got to work so many dogs in
Yeah.
3 months' time,
And that's
and
it works
to try
for
to
'em.
have a finished product.
Mm-hmm.
If a dog takes a little longer at one phase,
Yeah.
like being force broke, ours are just encouraged, not forced.
If we've had them where they heavy hit it on the shock collar and they're frying them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You turn them off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They want nothing to do with it.
Well, there you go. It's like there's a good example of how Charles and I were talking about. It's like there's all these different trainers out there that give demonstrations, have videos, and everything on, and it's like they're showing you a way,
Yes.
One way.
but it works for that dog or that type of dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand, and they need to understand that it don't work the same for every dog.
Every dog.
Right.
And so there's not a book, there's not a video that answers all the questions.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean it's a bad dog. It just means that way didn't work.
And that's another good point. It's like somebody will say, "Oh, this dog, it's not going to cut it."
Yeah.
And they're talking about it from the perspective of their method didn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean the dog should be washed out.
Right.
Somebody else can take that dog and boom, find all the right,
We've seen it.
yeah.
Yeah.
We went from that trainer to that trainer and totally different dog.
Yeah.
And sometimes
they're
it's
happy.
even at the time in that dog's life, that particular
Absolutely.
thing
Yeah.
isn't
Yes.
correct. Maybe
Right.
a maturity thing, maybe there can
Dogs
be
at
there can be
heat or
so many
something,
reasons.
and it misses out on this aspect of the training because he's locked up.
You mentioned in a conversation we had about how your dogs respond to things getting boring, didn't I?
They
Yes.
do. They're
So,
sassy.
Can you
They'll we had a couple this year, the last 2 years that the trainers are using, and one called up and he says, "Karen, they're asking us questions." I says, "Well, if you keep doing the thing over and over the same way, they're bored, and they will turn around and they do it. It's a bark, but it's a different bark.
It's
And it's a sassy bark, and they're like, knock it off. I got this. What's next?"
right, really?
And they're bored.
So to me, right there, you go, wow. Just that alone is how obvious we underestimate their intelligence.
Exactly.
Because they actually are communicating with you
Yes.
and saying, let's move on.
Come on.
Yes, absolutely. And that Walter's book, Gun Dog,
Uh-huh.
he's so regimented in everything he does.
I know, yeah.
And I've had Grit was the dog he basically turned around and said, sort of like,
get over this.
yeah, I'll stand here, but
This is stupid.
You and I did the same thing. I had that book. I read it. I went through it. Now I go, I still have it.
Yeah.
But to me, I tell anybody, you need to burn it. I'm really, because it's not
not right.
If you understand a little bit about dog training, you can say, yeah, this is teaching a dog how to learn.
Right.
And then stop when the certain signs pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
sometimes
it's just the regimentation aspect, and they love regiment.
You can learn what not to do.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Training
perfect.
too. I've actually Ethan one time had me sit down and watch a training DVD and basically did like do's and don'ts, and there was a lot of don'ts in that list of what we watched, of what we would not do.
Mm-hmm.
So something to, as you move on and you get more advanced in training and understanding, it's kind of fun to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
And you can pick out the good nuggets and kind of get rid of the rest.
Yep.
But in our line, there's all kinds of personalities too. They vary, and you're going to see a little dog that take a little more, and then you're going to see one you better read. It's a little more sensitive. But if you work with that sense, I always consider them sensitive but intelligent. They know enough. And if you take that time with them, they're going to blossom. I would say our dogs are a little more immature compared to the dogs today that are being campaigned. They're slower to start. They're not ready to be on the line and ready to go instantly. It takes them a while to work up to it. Yeah, we have an occasional dog. You'll hear about Sophie at 6 months old. First trial she went to, she won a puppy, a big one. And the next weekend, Tim put her, or 2 weekends later, he put her in a derby. She won it. And then it started. That dog was ready to go, but not all of them. And you have to take the time to read them.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either, a negative.
No, you can end up, instead of playing a banjo, getting a violin.
Well, that's perfectly stated. And like some people will hear, they'd hear a statement, these dogs were slow. These dogs are generally slow to start. And someone will go, oh, well, that's a negative.
Yes.
Right? That's, oh, wow.
They don't know what they got.
Wait a minute. No, it's not. You may have to, it might take a little more time, but then when everything comes together, they zoom right past, in many ways, that dog that was out of the gate. So that dog out of the gate may have been, pretty good dog, but then they sort of advanced to a point, and then that's where they flattened off and stayed that way.
Yeah.
And the slower dog has this trajectory that keeps going up. And I always, to me, it's the intelligence or their brain. It's they're like, there's so much more going on there. There's like this whole other chambers in there that the other dog doesn't have.
Yes.
And also think about, a lot of dogs weren't worked until they were older because we didn't have vaccinations.
Yes.
So you'd put a ton of time into a 6-month-old puppy to have it die at a year old from distemper.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the fast developing puppies, I think, are a newer trend in the since we got vaccinations. And so when you have some older type dogs, you may see a little bit slower to develop and to begin. And not that you can't train the dog and work with them, but they just might not quite have the same kind of ground application or run or speed that they would at 7 months old than they did at 14, 15, 16 months old.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we're talking about. We're not saying that you go to, work with the puppy at 12 weeks old and it can't do anything yet because it's slow. It's just, they doesn't get to finish the dog part of its life to start on that track until a little bit later in life. And I do think that was part of it, is a lot of times puppies were just left to be puppies for a lot longer. They might go hunt a season, but you got to wait and see and make sure that your puppy's going to make it through the trials of a non-vaccinated life. And then now we know the puppy's going to make it. So time to get
Holcomb always told us that first year the puppy's life isn't for you to get birds. It's for the puppy
to learn.
They don't come out of the womb smelling anything. They learn the smell. They have the instincts, but then they lock up on a wild chucker. That just turned on a bunch of switches.
Mm-hmm.
That they're pre-programmed, but you've got to introduce them.
Oh,
Sometimes they got to knock.
I've said that.
20 hen pheasants first.
Yeah. No, it's only
That's
19.
true.
Or 19. Locked up on 20.
I was praying.
I had a pup. I didn't have wild birds to use, but I had a pup that took 40 pigeons.
Whoa.
Before she pointed for the first time. Like 14 weeks, 16, somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't remember where. Baby.
Yeah.
But man, she was a fire breather. Still is.
Yeah. Once you start turning on, the switches they expect the switches all to be on right away now. Mm-hmm. These dogs, you're turning on switches as you're exposing them. Mm-hmm. And then
I think the other thing that the Radbachs had the reputation for just being gun dogs, run a close bond to a hunter situation.
They were vacuum cleaners.
And yet I found working with our dogs, other than Grit, the first one, that's what they were, but they just needed to go hunting and bigger, more open. You had to kind of plan where you took them to give them the confidence to range, especially if you're doing field trials. And like Rowdy, he was known as the perfect gun dog for years. I mean, he never got outside of the gun dog range until we tried to compete in an NGSPA our stake, and he ran a gun dog.
Did he?
And yeah, and but good. Everybody liked him, but he wasn't out the range and finding birds out on the edge, things like that. And I watched 2 or 3 dogs. Barry Snook had a couple. Madam Razzie and John Sullivan had Ruby, and Ruby was, I don't know if she ever was dog of the year, but she was the dog any serious competitor had to beat. So I rode the braces that he won amateur or NGSPA amateur several times. And I just knew, actually, how come my dog doesn't run down that canyon up that other side and along that ridge? It's because of how he hunted. And so I just happened to talk casually about him. I didn't really ask him about his training, but where you hunted and how you hunted and all that. And I knew that it was chucker hunting. Mm-hmm. And so we just went out and got into bigger, more open chucker hills. So the dog had to work a whole lot harder to find the birds, and they found them. It just took more time, and the dog got confidence in being away from a hunter-handler situation.
Right.
And
so it isn't they didn't have the run in them. They hadn't been exposed to situations that
they didn't
stretched them out.
Didn't have any reason to get away from their beloved handler.
Right.
Because we were finding birds in gun dog range.
This also plays in this also there's so many ways you can go here, but it's like lots of people think, well, this is a NAVDA dog.
No, there is no such thing.
And then, so they're not a field trial dog.
No,
okay.
But now we see people successfully playing in all these venues.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's about not what, I mean, I'm not going to say there aren't some dogs that are born with just a huge run in them or very comfortable with being way off from you.
Yes.
But then you also have the dogs that are they just need to be exposed.
Yes.
And got friends out east that are playing Donnie Ebersol and the Friedelsheim gang.
Yeah.
For example, NAVDA guys. And now they had spicy NAVDA dogs. They weren't low drive, but they're now they're very successful in the field trial circles, which I think is great. And it's not just them. There's lots of people in the Midwest now that are, well, I say lots, but several. And there's Brenda Rowe and Rick Hopkins down in Georgia who've been doing field trial stuff a long time. I think it's more, I'll call it the walking stakes. Maybe they run the horseback stakes too. But what I'm saying is this dog doesn't have to be, you don't have to pull something in, let's put it that way, that makes them run. They'll have the run in them, and the breed has all the capabilities to do whatever you want to do with them. Right.
Yep. They have the opportunities.
Yeah.
So there's 2 thoughts I have. one thought was a conference. So first of all, you've talked about frozen semen breeding. I've done a lot of frozen semen breedings, going back to dogs that are older, the past dogs. And so I've had conversations with different people who are like, why would you want to go back? Why do you want to go back? Because the dogs today why go back? Because we have better dogs today. And, great now isn't the same as great back then. And so I don't want to set any bias here, but I have my own opinions about that as far as how do you define great?
Yes.
To me, it's like, I don't think that's a sliding scale. It's like great is great over time. But anyway, what's your comments on that about why breed to these old dogs of the past?
Predictability, consistency. Mm-hmm. It's all there. It's already.
They do everything that you would want from a current standard, somebody else's greater dog or as great a dog. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet we can predict that all our dogs will be like all our other dogs. What do you?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to shut it off.
Your phone?
Yeah, I want to shut it off.
Okay. I couldn't hear it. So, my response to some people has been, when they talk to me about that, I'm like, well, what I thought was great 40 years ago is still great.
The same dog.
It's like, what else would I want? If I had a great dog, then he was all these things that it's like he excelled at.
Yes.
And I wanted to not lose that. And so I tried to, that's why I'm just using examples there. That's why you collect, some's really great specimen of a dog. That's why you collect them and get it frozen so that you can bring it up again.
Right.
And you're line breeding on that dog.
Yes.
So then here is another little twist. And I actually believe in this to some extent. Some people talk about how you can, I don't know how to call it, external forces can influence genetics. Do you believe that? I don't know what the term is, but let's say your dog, I don't know, the training techniques of today or the things you expose them to have impacts on them genetically. That actually, do you believe that?
I'd have to think a lot about that.
I think it has more to do with if you are set in a training way, you train specifically this way, you're going to lean towards puppies and dogs that work better the way you train.
Yes.
So I wouldn't say that you're just going to take a dog, and if we had the exact same dog, cloned it, that you train one way, I train another way, we're going to change what that dog is. Genetically. We're not going to do that.
And then it's going to reproduce the changes you made.
I don't believe that. But what I do believe is that
there might be a little bit there.
But there are people who do believe that.
Attitude and
Okay, so I'm not. Go ahead. Did you?
I believe that it happens more over generations. That you may be inadvertently selecting dogs that work better for what you want,
exactly.
And then you may say, "Oh, I've trained this way for 4 generations, so I changed that dog now." Mm-hmm. No, you just selected your puppies and the dogs that you've bred to match what your training methods. These dogs can't take pressure, so. The way this one doesn't take pressure, so I don't breed that one. Oh, look at this one. This one can take what I threw at it. All right, that's the one I breed. And then now you have these dogs that can take whatever.
I think there's a certain amount of that.
I believe that.
If you have a potential a kennel setup where you have the opportunity to do multiple breedings and selections and all that.
And I think people probably do it without even realizing it.
Yes.
Because they stay within their own
comfort zone
stuff, and they're staying within their own dogs, and then next thing you know, they've done that. I think that I definitely believe that happens, and maybe that's what they're in their mind. That's what they're seeing when they say, "Oh, the way that I've influenced this dog's genetics." I don't believe that you can in one dog take a puppy and make it produce something different somehow because of how you've handled it or trained it or how.
It's predisposed with genetics.
Right.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's a terrier. It's not, you're not going to add something to it unless you bring it in
totally. I think.
Dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
I found us doing that. That's exactly what we've done.
You haven't heard that?
No, I've never heard that somebody thought that they could, by training or doing something specific with this puppy, they will affect its genetics and it will pass that on.
Right. And I know several people.
My science mind says there's 0.
Yeah, pretty close.
And
but have you seen it done?
No, I I personally haven't observed, that I can say, oh yeah, I see what, and I'm just saying, I've had these discussions. It all goes back to that discussion about what's great, because they're saying, well, what was great 40 years ago isn't the same as today, because we've influenced the genes. The things we're doing has made these dogs different genetically, and that's where this is all coming from here.
Well, I do believe that, but it's not. It's through breeding.
Yes, I think that the dogs that are doing well today have been guided a bit because they've had such a hodgepodge background.
Well,
versus
here's another path I can go down, is like you think, okay, great today might be better than great 50 years ago, and I say, okay, well, where's the
definition?
Where's the new Axel von Wasserschling?
Yeah.
Where's the new Greif dog? Anybody talking?
No.
We're still talking about
old dogs.
These dogs of the past, and there's a reason for that.
Yes.
It's you can't hide it. And I'm not saying there haven't been a lot of great dogs, but those three, I'm just using those three. And then there's all these other we've talked about that popped up. Yesterday it was Linda talking about Abe, Lancer D. Your dogs, we just talked about Grit, and I can't remember all of them. Trey and
Rebel,
and
Rowdy.
Sebastian von Greif, and
Sebastian is
Blick and Kit, and these dogs come along, and you down the road, you're like, wow, I never got another dog like. It's like I got stuff close.
Yeah.
Yes.
But nothing ever replaced them as like a pillar dog in the breeding program.
But I mean, great dogs like Lancer D and Abe, they're products of who?
Yeah.
It all goes back to the origins.
Exactly. Yeah.
And where are they today? Where are those dogs?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not seeing them.
Right. No.
Well, nobody did a line breeding concentration of those that
don't breed
particular
that
dog's
way.
traits.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They don't breed that
do
way.
That.
Yeah. They avoided
and
it.
Now
they're breeding to dog of the day and who's winning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really care.
And you can't now. You can't. They're 10
it's
generations
harder.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can influence.
Yes.
You can see their influence as you concentrate, Axelmore or Hustler more, or you start concentrating these dogs, you can see it more, but you can't do a true line breeding.
Yeah.
Well,
but we are big believers in line breeding. We are.
Yeah.
We proved it to ourselves.
Now that you can do some testing, genetic testing and health testing,
we wish we had tightened it up.
You can avoid a lot of the concerns that people.
Well, there was this concept that you're creating a genetically weaker dog by line breeding, and we're proving that's not true.
Yes.
If your genetics are clean.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the knowledge that we have today on the testing, but knowing back then, what would we change? We would have tightened it up more.
Well, some of the things that I remember reading about with, it's in Georgina's book, even that some of the outcomes of line breeding include smaller dog, less healthy dog, smaller litter sizes, smaller puppies, problems with reproduction.
Ooh.
Go down that list, right?
We've never had any of them.
Right.
A little bit smaller dog, I think.
On Bimbo stuff.
And Bimbo's had,
If you're line breeding on a dog, maybe that was already maybe a smaller dog, and then you're sort of intensifying that.
Yeah. And we backed it off and brought in, a little more bone.
And a little better confirmation.
And your litter sizes today,
big.
Dozen puppies.
What's your average? Dozen puppies? Wow. That's kind of not a small litter.
10 to 12 is what the,
And what about mothering? I mean, the pregnancy, mothers have nice, normal, reproductive cycles.
Yeah.
They breed easily, right? Or
very fertile girls.
And then they have large litters, and they take care of them.
Yes. Excellent moms.
Yeah. So those are all things also that Georgina talked about, Whaley's talked about in his books. It's like, these are things you look for when you're picking a gene pool.
Yes.
Is important.
Yes.
Is the mother is big deal here.
Yeah.
How good basically what kind of mother is she?
Yes.
She gets pregnant. She has ease of, whelping is there's no issues. You just leave them alone and let them have the puppies.
Yes.
They take care of them. They keep them clean. They feed them,
Yep.
you know, and they don't wean them at 3 weeks, you know, they take care of them.
Now a lot of breeders are interfering on it and weaning them. And I say, you know, you're having an impact on that litter.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But our girls of these last litters we had, the 5, those moms have all been excellent. Mm-hmm. And in the couple, what drives me crazy, to be real honest, we've been spending all this time tightening this up and getting these great results. And then all these people, I got to have one. And they've been waiting 2-3 years to get these dogs. They get them and then they fix them.
Yeah.
Talk about a slap in the face. They don't know what it took to get there.
Oh, yeah.
And then the wife wants the male cut because the vet's got them convinced they're going to pee all over their house.
Breed the neighborhood.
And they're going to get cancer. And I'm like, no, that's a habit. So, you know, you get these wonderful owners. Mm-hmm. They got to have these dogs. And they think we're going to keep producing them for them while they keep neutering and spaying them. So, the last couple litters, there's a couple of young guys that are taking semen draws on these dogs. And I says, thank you.
Right.
I'll help you. I'll pay the rent on the semen if you want.
Amen.
Just protect it.
Man, this is awesome topic again you're bringing up because it's something that irritates me. Veterinarians, I think, are trained in school to preach that, you know, neuter.
Yes.
And you're selling dogs to people. You don't know who's going to turn out to be, what dog's going to turn out to be that next. It might be, you know, this dog that was just going to be a hunting dog. And all of a sudden they've got this great, phenomenal dog and you want it to be intact.
Yes.
And I think, you know, you don't have to neuter your dog to control their reproductive behavior.
Yes.
That's true.
You don't turn them loose at night and go, here, take the keys, go run around, have a good time. Don't come back pregnant.
Yes.
You keep them under control.
Yes.
And they can live a healthy, normal life. I've only neutered like a couple dogs in my entire life.
We don't know.
You know, because the dog maybe, you know, I did it recently because she was developing some lumps on her. And I'm like, we better take, you know, some steps here. Otherwise, Jake lived to be, my dog Jake, he was almost 15 years old. He was intact. He didn't have any problems with any of that. Didn't cause him any problems.
We don't neuter our males.
No. And it's like, why do you have to neuter a male?
You need to keep them intact to develop their muscles
normally.
And their testosterone, they need it to get those muscles. Mm-hmm. And they're neutering dogs before a year old. And I'm going, this is crazy. It's not good. And they've done research now that shows you shouldn't be doing that.
Right. And we've touched on it before. Vets have to, as part, so a lot of vets, part of their schooling and they may have to go intern at a kill clinic and spend 8 hours, a full day
neutering dogs.
No,
or killing. Oh,
yeah.
Disposing of, because there's nobody to take them.
Nobody wants
them. And so then it greatly, especially if you have somebody that's already, you know, a little sensitive to that. And now all of a sudden they get into their practice and they go, I am going to do everything in my power to make sure I don't contribute to that.
Yes.
And, you know, it just comes to breeders to inform their puppy owners that you have to stand up and advocate for your dog.
Yes.
If you're going to spay or neuter, you just have to wait. It's okay. You can get a pair of Amazon dog underwear for the girls.
It works.
And you put those on and you'll forget a couple times and they'll pee in the yard in them. We still do it.
We wash them.
Yep. And the boys, if they're marking, it is behavior. It is not. You can buy a cummerbund
from Amazon, the same place. And when your female comes in to heat, she gets the diapers, he gets the cummerbund. And everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And everybody, my dog will get that off. I said, well, we've got male and female intact here. They're not getting them off.
Yeah. And we bring, the boys come into the house at the kennel all the time.
Yes.
There'll be 3 girls in season, 2 of them that are being bred. But tonight it's Thunder's turn to come in the house and he'll go in the house and he doesn't mark and he's, because he has appropriate
You'll
behavior.
Get exceptions, but Sebastian.
Well, there's always exceptions to all of this. None of this is a black line.
But when a female and he came to his house for a visit, they had to put him in the truck, dog truck, and drive a quarter
mile away.
Because he would howl all night. Which, if
So
you
they
met
could sleep.
Sebastian, you'd love him. He was just a great guy.
And
His
that's
personality.
Doug Schamberger's dog.
Yeah, he
Yes.
was absolutely a character. It drove Linda crazy, but it was, he made you laugh.
Yeah.
He was a stud dog.
Hmm.
He was a happy guy.
Circling back to this legacy of the Rodbach, I remember you mentioned one time to me in a conversation about you had to speak at a meeting. Was it in place of somebody? You remember you had to fill in for somebody? Oh, as your husband, because he was not feeling well or something.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Can
That's simple.
Remind me what happened there.
Well,
Was that an honorary thing to
yes,
to Bob?
at the Bird Dog Hall of Fame for American Field,
Uh-huh.
they nominated Bob for Hall of Fame, and he was accepted. And I was trying to get Grant Holcomb to go and accept it. You know, it's his father, and they have grandkids and great grandkids. Well, and they said, no, you're our representatives. You're a Rodbach now. We want you to go and do this. I said, okay. So the plan was Bob was going to speak. And we prepped and did all this stuff. I'm sitting there rah-rah, and and all of a sudden when it came to the moment to call us up on stage, to bring it up,
It's okay. I get it.
they he sat there, and Mike Aldrich is with him also.
and he's a friend,
He's
close friend.
yeah, and the gal up there that's speaking keeps calling my name up. So I finally go up, and I'm like, "Come on, guys!" Nobody came. I was up there by myself. I was not prepared, so I talked off the hip. I mean,
And it was perfect.
I don't even know what I said. And this is a room full of who's who in the hunting dog world of
Pointers and
Brittany's, everybody.
Yeah, and Shorthairs were that day.
Yeah. So, we were accepting the Hall of Fame award for Bob. And then I told the Greif story, how they saw Greif and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dan Hoke was nominated, had a lifetime patron award.
And so was Ray Calkins.
And Dr. Ray Calkins, who drew all our semen draws on our dogs, he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a wire hair guy, and he's judged every national except the wire hair, which is funny. But so they kept me up there speaking, and I was not planning that. It was not on my agenda.
But you handled it.
Yeah.
So they say. I don't know what I said.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
That's great.
But we were there out of respect for Bob Holcomb, representing him. Yeah. That was what it was
and
about.
His family.
And his family.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wonderful people. It's just that's not their thing anymore. I mean, they knew that. I mean, I still remember Grant telling me how, because Lutz lived there in the kennel in Washington, in the Radbach Kennels there. And when Grant got in trouble as a young boy, he went to the final run, the last run where Lutz was, and he hung out in that kennel with Lutz during the day when he got in trouble, and Lutz gave him comfort, and that was his best buddy.
Wow.
And it made you feel really good to hear. Lutz was this calm, quiet gentleman. He wasn't, there's the Rodbach trait with a lot of our dogs is they spin when they get all excited, and they're just, Lutz wasn't. He was a gentleman. He was Abe. When you met Abe, you knew he was a gentleman. He was just class. So Lutz was one of those old dogs that just had his act together and said, it's okay. And that little boy got comfort out of him.
Awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah. I think it's just the quality of the dogs and how they were bred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome. Well,
I'm good.
Have we covered it?
I think so.
Like a good bird dog, we've run the course.
I don't know what else.
We're standing at the end. The callback maybe is coming.
Where are we behind the woodshed or not?
Didn't have to put anybody behind the woodshed.
Right, good. I feel better. I didn't have to go behind the woodshed.
Hey, thank you guys for
You bet.
What a great conversation. And
well, thank you for doing this. This is kind of special to all of us. Short hair.
In
lovers.
summary, let's just, to me, like in summary, like, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because here we are today in 2023, and we're talking about dogs that are 70 years ago.
Yes.
And all the people, and it's like, we want to preserve this history that's rich.
Yes.
And that a lot of people today, you know, I know they when I talked, you know, I can't believe here I am now, an older person. It seems weird. It's like, wow, I just seemed like a blink of my eyes. I was one of these new guys.
Yeah.
And now but you know, I dug in and I studied the breed. I was, you know, and then some of these people we're talking about now, they weren't that far in the past when I started. Yeah. And so what I'm getting at is a lot of people today haven't heard these stories. They don't know these dogs.
Yes.
And I want them to not be lost.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to, you know, everybody understand this didn't just happen.
No.
There was an effort put into it.
Effort.
And there's, you know, there's been some ups and downs in the breed. But the beauty of it is now here we are today, and we're talking about those original great dogs that are pure, it's been maintained, and that's who we have today to work with. And I see a lot of resurgence to me. I see a lot of interest from people of all walks, you know, women, people from all races, you know, getting involved in bird hunting and NAVDA and other, you know, other venues, field trials. You see, to me, I see field trials. To me, it's like swinging back to being more like what it was supposed to be.
Yes.
And
there's 2 types of trials now.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But
and you know, then lastly, I'll say all these stories I've been hearing about what the field trial people were like. I'm going, wow, this sounds very much like I'll call it the environment of the NAVDA world, where it's about training dogs, people getting together and helping each other. And
yes.
I've never seen that with field trial organizations.
No, that's how we started.
And that's what you guys did. You talked about Holcomb.
And
he insisted upon, you know, the people that own the dogs had to come there and help him train the dogs.
Right. Yeah. Train you
the
to
owner
handle
involvement.
Yeah. You know, and wow,
it was fun.
And that's why it was so successful.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll stop with that.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.